Well, hello there. I am really excited about this episode. You're about to hear or watch a recording, if you're on YouTube, of a 1-hour live training that I did recently called Personal Branding for Women Leaders. If you're a longtime listener to the Talk About Talk podcast, you'll notice that this one is just a little bit different. If this is your first time listening to the Talk About Talk podcast, then I have to say, this is an outstanding place to start. And I should probably start by introducing myself. My name is Dr. Andrea Wojnicki. Please just call me Andrea. I'm an executive communication coach here at Talk About Talk, where I coach ambitious professionals and executives like you to communicate with confidence and clarity so you can achieve your career goals. If you check out the talkabouttalk.com website, you'll find information there about all the services we provide, including private coaching, masterclasses, corporate workshops, and on-demand courses. There are also lots of free resources that you can download there, and my free communication skills-focused email newsletter. You can check it all out at talkabouttalk.com. Let's get into the episode. If you are here, I'm going to guess that you are either curious or maybe you're beyond curious and you're ready to start establishing your strong personal brand or your professional identity, as I call it. And you probably also know, as I certainly do, that it is a little bit different for women. I'm going to say that. It is a little bit different for women. I'm going to say we have some unique challenges. Some of these challenges are imposed on us from society and culture, and some of them are things that we do to ourselves. So we're going to talk about those things explicitly. But the fact that you're here, I think we are a fantastic tribe, I'm going to say. That if you're here, probably like me, you're not giving up. You're not going to just let it happen. You're going to make it happen. So kudos to you. We are going to cover lots in the next hour. If you follow me on LinkedIn or if you listen to the podcast or you subscribe to the newsletter, you're going to know one thing about me, which is I'm really big on the power of three. I'm really big on the power of three. So I'm going to take you through 3 ways to think about your brand. And then I'm going to take you through 3 ways that branding is different for women. And then I'm going to take you through my top 3 suggestions. So I was thinking, given this audience of women only, what are my top 3 suggestions? Given these definitions and given the ways that branding is different for women, my 3 suggestions for what you can do starting right now to start developing your ideal personal brand or professional identity. So we're going to cover those 3 things, and then I'm going to open it up to the Q&A. And as I said, you can put the questions in the chat. I've got Priscilla here who's helping us out and to moderate some of the questions, or you can also raise your virtual hand at the end. I don't want to spend too much time introducing myself, but I just want to say briefly, for those of you who I do know, it's wonderful to see you again. And for those of you who I haven't met, thank you and welcome. So I want to start by sharing with you what branding is not, in my mind. One thing that I know from reading and thinking and podcasting and interviewing people and on about focused on personal branding. One thing that I know for sure that's true is that many people have different ideas about what we're talking about here. So I have had clients who want me to help them establish their personal brand, and we set up a coaching program, and they go back to their boss and they're like, here's the list of topics that Andrea is going to take me through that we're going to cover in the coaching sessions. And one of the 10 topics is personal branding. And sometimes, this has happened a few times, their manager will say, yes, no personal branding. So why is that? They think that I am going to try to turn them into a social media influencer so they quit their job or monetize their brand. And I'm here to say that is not what I'm talking about. Although if you really wanted to, you could. But I think about branding differently. I think of it as your identity or your reputation. This is basically taking the strategic principles that we know as brand managers, as I was at Kraft. A brand manager has a creative brief, a strategic brief that they share with their agency to come up with their packaging and their advertising and their promotions and their positioning. And all of the elements of that brief are how we can think about ourselves in terms of your values, in terms of what makes you unique relative to your competitors, if you want to use the same vocabulary, right? All of these things we can think about strategically in terms of ourselves. I'm going to share with you a couple of definitions. The first one is a definition that if you've done any reading on personal branding, you've probably come across this before. It's Jeff Bezos, the founder and former CEO of Amazon. He famously said, your brand is what people say about you when you're not in the room. And this quote has become synonymous with personal branding work. Just about any article, as I said, that you've ever read, in the first couple paragraphs, this is what comes up. And this is the definition that I actually used with my clients for a couple of years. So I would ask them, what are people thinking and saying about you when you're not in the room? And now I'm actually asking you this in real time, right here and right now. What are the important stakeholders in your career? So it could be your boss and your boss's boss are meeting to talk about succession planning, and your name comes up in conversation. What are they thinking and saying about you? That's your brand. Now, most people will freak out. They'll be like, oh, I think they think this. I think I want to be seen as this. And there's a bit of a disconnect. That's okay. That's why we're here. We've got some work to do. But this is a really valuable mental exercise. What are people thinking and saying about you when you're not in the room? And the important stakeholders, again, it could be your boss, it could be clients. If you're an entrepreneur, it could be clients, it could be your staff, it could be your team that you're working with. It could be, if you're an entrepreneur, maybe it's investors. What are the important stakeholders thinking and saying about you when you're not there? So this was my definition for years. This is the exercise that I would take my coaching clients through. And a couple years ago, or about a year and a half ago, I had the great fortune of interviewing Seth Godin for the podcast. And Seth, I did his podcasting fellowship, his inaugural podcasting fellowship way back about 6 or 7 years ago. So I emailed him, asked if I could interview him. We had this fantastic conversation. I definitely went off script. I wasn't just talking to him about his books. I really wanted to hear his take on personal branding. And I asked him, I said, Seth, how do you think about your brand? And we got into this conversation about his quirky, like he wears these plastic orange glasses, actually similar to mine, these plastic glasses. And he said, some people say that's my brand, but that's not my brand. That's my logo. And I was like, we don't need to go down that rabbit hole. I think that is part of your brand, how you show up, right, Renee? How you show up is part of your brand. But really, Seth, how do you think about your brand? And then he delivered this gold. He said, your brand is what people think you're going to do next. So he said, Andrea, my brand is what people think I'm going to do next. I was like, this is next level. This is next level. So we have Jeff Bezos, your brand is what people think about you when you think and say about you when you're not in the room. You can also think of it as what people think you're going to do next. I actually think this is a little bit more powerful, right? It's more impactful. So I ask you now, I encourage you now to do exactly what I did when I got off this interview with Seth Godin. I took out a sheet of paper sitting where I am right now. I drew a line down the middle of it. And I said, what do people think I'm going to do next? Like, what are the big career, I guess, guideposts, the impressive things, the accomplishments that I'm going to have over the next 5 or 10 years? What do they think? And then actually, what are my goals? So I encourage you to do the same thing. In one column, write down the things that you want to accomplish. For me, I want to write a book. I want to be on the TED stage. I want to be a bestseller. I've got lofty goals. What do people think is possible? And then the magic happens when you merge these two lists, right? This is the magic of personal branding, but it doesn't come without effort. And when I think about these two ways that these two smart men talk about branding, I give them credit. These are helpful exercises. But to me, they lack one thing. They lack agency. What do I mean by that? Your brand is what people think you're going to do next. It's like, well, so what can I do about it, right? Or your brand is what people are thinking and saying about you when you're not there. Well, okay. So how do I influence what my boss is saying about me in that room where they're talking about succession planning? So I created a different definition that, as I said, includes agency. And it's this: personal branding is about being yourself on purpose. So there's two elements here that are really important for you to consider. Being yourself, you, your true self, your authentic self. Yes, I said the A word, your authentic self. Now, that doesn't mean you're sharing everything with everyone. As Seth Godin would say, Andrea, I don't care if your cat is puking over there or that you barely got here on time. You show up as a professional. So it's being yourself, your true self, your authentic self, and your best self. There's a million ways to tell the same story. So tell your story in a way that serves you. Show up as your true self and your best self. And then, so that's part of it, being yourself on purpose. I have this in capital letters because that's what we're doing here right now. We are unapologetically, in a disciplined and strategic way, thinking about what we're communicating about ourselves and then communicating it in this strategic way. So the big difference between how most coaches will coach you on creating a strong brand versus what I do is, you can think of it as 2 steps. Step 1 is creating or articulating your brand. Like, who am I? What do I stand for? What are my unique strengths, expertise? I see people writing notes. I'm so happy when people write notes. What are my unique strengths, my expertise, my skills, my passions? So that's step 1. And then step 2 is communicating it. Communicating it on LinkedIn, communicating it in how you introduce yourself, communicating it in your corporate bio, communicating it what's behind you. I have my books, I have my degree, I have my plants, right? Like, what do you have? All communicating it in how you dress, communicating it in what drink you bring in to the meeting, right? If someone brings in, I don't know, a coffee, a beer, a water, a cola, you're signaling something about yourself. So being yourself on purpose is first thinking about who you are, articulating and identifying and focusing on your unique brand. And step 2 is the communication step. The big difference, again, is that I spend much more time, guaranteed, than most people do on step 1. This is the thing. Garbage in, garbage out, quality in, quality out. If you spend the time creating a list of your unique strengths and really internalizing them and thinking about how you're going to narrate them and how you're going to reinforce them, the communication step is so much easier. It's so much easier. Okay, so we've got these 3 definitions, and I've spoken with, many people. I've run corporate workshops where I put this slide up and I ask people to raise their hand and tell me which definition resonates for them. I wouldn't be sharing each of these 3 definitions if I didn't think they were valuable. I think these are all very effective ways, and I encourage you to think of all 3 of them. Ask yourself, what are people thinking and saying about you when you're not in the room? And maybe you're like, oh, they're thinking and saying kind of what I want. Fine, move on to the next definition. Or if it's not what you want, then start thinking about correcting that, right? And then secondly, what do they think you're going to do next? If these are not aligned with your goals, then you need to start communicating things about yourself so that the list of aspirations versus what people think, as I said, merges. And then lastly, this definition that I share with my enthusiastic thumbs up: being yourself, your true, authentic, whole self. I'm going to add one other thing there. This drives me crazy when people say, well, I have my work identity and then I have my personal identity, and I'm really 2 different people. I'm like, well, that must be really, really hard. That must actually be exhausting. Wouldn't it be easier if you were always the same person? Like, truly, if you're always the same person, but you filter. This is, like, I call it the F word of personal branding. Filter. You filter what parts of your identity you're going to share with the world, depending on who you're talking to and the context. So I didn't share with you that I'm a painter. I didn't share with you that I'm obsessed with the color turquoise. I didn't share with you that I have 3 children that are absolutely ginormous. They're all very tall. Okay. Those are parts of my identity. In other contexts, I might share those things, right? If I'm going to an art gallery with a friend, I would, of course, they would know that I paint and I would talk about that. But so you are always your whole true self, but you filter what you share. This comes up, by the way, a lot for women in the context of being a mother. I hear this. I just got the shivers because I was remembering during COVID, I was doing some workshops for newly promoted partners at one of the consulting firms around the world. And this wonderful, young, incredibly intelligent, high achieving, ambitious woman in China said to me, I just got promoted. I was in the room at the table with the partners, and I said something about one of my kids, and everybody went silent. And they all looked at me. And she said, I was like, And then later on, I noticed someone else said something about their kids. And she said it was like, and I said, listen, when you're senior enough in your organization, and you are going to be, look at how young you are and what you've achieved, you can create a culture where everyone can talk about that stuff. In the meantime, you filter what you talk about to accomplish your goals. Given the context, given the people that you're with in the moment, you filter what parts of your identity. Doesn't mean you're not a great mom just because you're not talking about your kids in that context. In fact, you may be a better mom because you're doing better at work, right? So we filter. You are always the same person, and you're doing so strategically in a disciplined way and unapologetically. And I know that that unapologetic part can be difficult, particularly for women. So at this point, I'm going to move on now to 3 ways that branding is different for women. And I'm going to say that I could have put so much here. So I decided to narrow it down to, given the power of 3, I'm going to narrow it down to 3. And the first one is related to society. You all and I have very little, if any, control. The second and third one, we can control. Okay. And I hope that that inspires you. So we do have some control. That's, I guess, one of the main takeaways from today. The first one, of course, is societal stereotypes and the culture that we live in. And the research, I'm familiar with the research. I have some of the books up here. The academic research shows that women are expected to be warm, communal, maternal, service-oriented, right? Versus leaders are expected to be authoritarian, and sometimes people would say like the opposite end of the spectrum of all of those traits. And so there are things that happen, therefore, that are outside of your control because you are a woman. People will stereotype you, and you probably embody some of these stereotypes. So what happens? Women get interrupted. So much research. Men interrupt women. Women interrupt women. Women do not interrupt men. Like, it's crazy. It's so imbalanced. We get interrupted. And when we do say something, sometimes our comments are attributed to others. Has this ever happened to you? You say something in a meeting and somebody says, so I have a thought, blah, blah, blah. They repeat what you said in different words. And then people go, great idea. You're like, what? I see people nodding. What just happened? So we get interrupted. Our ideas are attributed to others. They carry less weight. It's like, well, maybe, I don't know. Anyone else have any ideas? Some dude says something and it's like gold, right? One other thing that happens is the type of feedback. So I learned this really directly when I was a professor at the University of Toronto. A female faculty member warned me the first time I ever got, that at the end of the class, they give all the students an evaluation sheet. Used to be pen and paper. It's probably online now. But anyway, and a scale of 1 to 7, how effective is this? And then they go into the comments. She said, so the scale of 1 to 7 is probably fair, although there is a main effect of gender. Men get rated higher. By the way, pregnant women get rated lower than non-pregnant women. And I actually hid my pregnancy one time when I was teaching because I wanted to see what would happen. And then the next, whatever. So the feedback, though, the words in the evaluation form are very different for women. And this may happen in your formal evaluations that you get with your employer, right? They talk to you about your style. They talk to you about, you should be more confident. You should improve stakeholder analysis. You should whatever. It's very sort of vague style, personality feedback versus for men, it's great job achieving this thing. And you missed this one, but we understand why because you had these things. And it's like, what? So they get feedback that's more tangible and we get feedback that's more, and maybe this goes back to all of the stereotypes. So the point here is we are walking a tightrope based on society and culture where we're trying to balance, if it's possible, how we project our strengths and our authority and our expertise while also being communal and maternal, if you want to use that word, or at least let's call it having strong people skills, right? And it's like the more you do one, it seems like there's a paper that one of my colleagues at the University of Toronto wrote when she was at Harvard Business School called Competent Jerks and Lovable Fools and Who Gets Promoted. And it's basically the idea is at work, you're one or the other. You're like a really nice woman who's a fool, or you're a competent jerk. And by the way, the competent jerks do better. right? And so this is really hard for women. I co-authored a paper with Dr. Amy Deal. She and one other co-author wrote a book called The Six Glass Walls. It's, in addition to the glass ceiling and the glass cliff, there are all these walls that we can find ourselves walking into that limit our career progression. And she and I co-authored a paper for Fast Company where the paper was called Stop Telling Women to Lead Like a Man. So, in fact, being aggressive or being authoritative or really mastering self-promotion or avoiding weak language, like these are all things that women are told that men seem to do naturally. And our point was maybe somewhere in between what women are naturally doing and what men are doing, maybe somewhere in between is actually the magic place. So again, this is a tightrope. It's really hard. I'm going to say this. This is almost an impossible task to overcome societal stereotypes. But we also do things that hurt us, like suffering from imposter syndrome. So I want to share something with you about imposter syndrome. So first a definition and then a little bit of background. So imposter syndrome is this feeling that most of us have that we will be found out and people will realize that we've been promoted beyond our ability and we don't belong in the room, or we don't belong on stage, or we don't belong behind the microphone, right? So this term, imposter syndrome, was actually coined in 1978 by two female social psychologists in the US. And they were doing research on successful women. Let me say that again. The research was on successful women and they interviewed them in depth and they were trying to figure out what do these women all have in common that differentiates them from less successful women and maybe that differentiates them from men. One of the themes that came out really strongly that ended up being kind of the pinnacle of the careers of these two social psychologists was they called it imposter phenomenon. And it was this feeling like I just described of being found out. I don't deserve to be here. I'm the one lucky person who got in somehow and maybe I'm going to get kicked out. They identified this theme and then they compared it to women who were less successful. And they realized actually it doesn't differentiate them. They feel that way too. And then they also researched men. Guess what? Men actually have imposter syndrome as well. And there's been tons of research. Basically, everyone experiences imposter syndrome. If you don't, then you're probably veering on the side of being arrogant. Imposter syndrome is really common. You can work to overcome it. So I'm going to say this. It's not your fault that you are experiencing imposter syndrome. And I have to say, the research shows that men experience it too, but men don't come to me saying, can you help me overcome imposter syndrome? They're like, can you help me communicate with precision? Or can you help me with my formal presentation skills? Women are like, I know I have imposter syndrome and I know you can help me. Here's the thing. You can work on your confidence. Confidence can be learned. Just ask Tina Fey. She talks about imposter syndrome all the time. And look at her. She's a rock star. Just ask Natalie Portman, the Oscar award-winning actress. She went back to Harvard to deliver the graduation speech. And she was quoted in the newspaper saying, like, I look around at these smart kids. I don't belong here. I don't know what. Excuse me? First of all, you graduated from the school. Secondly, you would have won an Oscar. You're very inspiring and capable and ambitious. You definitely belong here. We all experience imposter syndrome. The issue with it is that it'll prevent you from speaking up and stepping up. And you need to speak up and you need to step up if you're going to be successful. And you can control this. You can work on your confidence. And this relates to the speaking up point, relates to the third way that I think branding is different for women. And I have this in quote, my work speaks for itself. I hear this over and over and over again from my clients, including very successful clients. I'm coaching right now a woman. She's assistant general counsel at a massive global technology firm. She's like second in line in the law department, in the legal department. And she's been there for, I think, 12 years. And she hired me to help her establish her brand, her strong professional identity, and to elevate her confidence and her credibility, her executive presence, you could say, because she was given the feedback that she's great at doing the work, but people don't know who she is and what she does. There was one of these succession planning meetings. She told me this when we first met, where her boss went in to advocate for her for a promotion. And like 3 of the people in the room said, oh, I didn't even know she was in legal. Who is that again? And she came back to her and she said, you have a branding problem. Like, you need to be establishing who you are and what your value is and what you do. So early, it's not our fault that this happens, by the way. And this is what I said to her. Early in your career, so actually before your career started, when you were at school, your teacher told you what to do. You did the work. You got an A. You applied to the universities. You did your best. You got into a great school. She got her law degree. She started at the law firm, right? She's articling. She's doing what the partners are telling her to do, patting her on the head. Good girl. You're doing what you can. Here's the thing. When you hit mid-career and senior career, there's no one looking after you over your shoulders to give you the check marks. It's your job to make sure that you speak up for your work. Your work does not speak for itself. And so I know a lot of you, a lot of men and women, but especially women, it seems like we are apprehensive about talking about the value of our contribution and our expertise and our work. And I say this, arrogant people think they're great at everything. They think they know everything and they'll take credit for anything. Perfectly confident people who have a strong brand are very specific about the value that they provide in the organization, what their expertise is, what their skills are, and they're not afraid of talking about it. In fact, you can even say the words, I have to say, I'm particularly proud of how I led this team to achieve whatever the goal was, right? You can call it out. You can say, I'm not into bragging. If you want to be perfectly explicit, I'm not into bragging, but I am really proud of what the team under my leadership accomplished this year. Here's where our goals, this is the final metrics. We knocked it out of the park. I heard a tech dude say once, if you don't talk about your work, you might as well not do it. So this is a little bit different from imposter syndrome, right? Imposter syndrome is feeling like you don't belong there and not speaking up and not raising your hand to volunteer to do the work. This third one is you're actually doing the work, but you're not talking about it. And this goes back to, remember I said the process is step one, articulating your strengths, your skills, your expertise, and step two is the talking. So being clear and focused about what your brand is, what your value is, what your accomplishments are, and then it makes the talking part, the communicating part, so much easier. Okay, so we have these three ways that branding is different for women. And so I don't want you to be like, okay, this is depressing because we have society stereotypes against us. We have this imposter syndrome, which is fair game given how we were raised. And I literally said this to the assistant general counsel that I was coaching. I'm not going to say her real name. Say it's Susan. I said, good girl, Susan. You've been doing your hard work for 12 years. And she goes, that's pretty much what my boss said. He's like, you're great, but you need to be clear on what your value is and not just sit down. And so I purposely chose this image of this woman burning the midnight oil. You will not, once you hit middle management, I see this again and again, the hard work is not going to help you knock it out of the park. If you want to knock it out of the park, you need to learn to talk about your value and your identity. All right. So I've got three ways that these are the top three things that come to mind that I would do if I were you, given the societal dynamics, given our typical female beliefs and behaviors. Here are three things that I would do. The first one, when people get this, makes a massive, massive difference. So the criteria for the traits and the skills that end up in your personal brand, the list of, I'm going to say up to 15 things that you share about yourself on a regular basis, implicitly and explicitly. The criteria is that these things are positive, unique, and relevant. Positive, PUR, positive, unique, and relevant. But if I had to choose just one criteria, it's this one, unique. If you can double down on your unique skills, you will be happier and more successful than you ever would have been. So if there's one thing that I want to leave you with, it is this. And I can tell you, I'm thinking of all of the senior executives that I've coached before. This is the one that makes the biggest difference. And it seems to make a big difference, especially for women. There was a vice president of human resources that I was working with. She was on the job market. She was she was employed, not happily. She was employed. She said, I'm ready to be a chief human resources officer, a CHRO. So she said, I've let my network know. And I've been going to several interviews. I've done maybe 6 interviews. And she said, Andrea, I'm not getting called back for any second round interviews. And I'm not sure what I'm doing wrong. It must be communication skills. So I need to hire you to help me. And I said, okay. So I said, let's first focus on developing your brand, and then we'll talk about your job interview answering and communication skills. So in one of our first sessions, I said to her, what is your unique strength that's going to make you a great CHRO? And she said something like, well, I think they're looking for someone who obviously has the technical human resources skills and expertise, but also who's a real team person, a team leader with strong EQ and people skills. And I was like, did she not hear my question? So I asked her again, and she kind of answered it the same way. And then I said to her, you're not answering the question. What makes you unique? And she kind of like had a little bit of a meltdown. She goes, or call it an epiphany. She said, oh my God, I have been answering the questions in these interviews in a way where it's pretty clear that I'm guessing what they want to hear as opposed to truly presenting who I am. And I said, okay, so let me ask you again, what makes you unique? And she goes, actually, it's my people skills. People love working for me. My boss told me I can make my people do just about anything. And I was like, that is gold. That is gold. That's the thing that you know people say about you that you know is true. It's positive, unique, and relevant. So the rest is history. She went to her next interview. Her confidence was heightened. She felt focused on her unique brand proposition, and she got the job as a CHRO. So this is gold. Focus on what makes you unique. Stop trying to guess. Of course, you have to meet minimum standards for all the criteria that they're looking for: promotion, for investment, for getting a new job. But focus on what makes you unique. You'll be happier and you'll be more successful. It's a big one. It works. The second one is speak for your work and control your narrative. So this really addresses one of the points that I made on the previous slide, where your work doesn't speak for yourself. You must speak for your work. Don't assume that people know what you did. Don't hesitate to use the word lead, leader, led, leadership. It's shocking to me how many leaders and aspiring leaders are not controlling the narrative. They'll say to me privately, well, I led this initiative where, we doubled our revenue or we doubled our profitability, whatever it is. And then I'll look at their LinkedIn profile and I'm like, first of all, I don't see that accomplishment there. But more importantly, where's the word leader? Oh, this is a big one. Control the narrative. Instead of saying, so tell me what you do. And you say, oh, my name is Jane Smith. I work at XYZ company in this department. I've been here for 10 years. So what? You could say, in the last 10 years, I worked from being like a mid-level analyst to joining the C-suite, where I've worked in 3 different functions, and I now have a fantastic overview. And last year we blah, blah, blah. Like, talk about the so what. Control your narrative. Every word, every phrase, every sentence that comes out of your mouth. And maybe if you've done the work in listing what your personal brand themes are, you can challenge yourself to mention some of those things, particularly when you're introducing yourself. So this comes up if you're sharing your career narrative. If you're sharing your career narrative, why don't you tell me a bit about your career history? Most people think that that means, okay, I graduated from my Bachelor of Commerce degree in 1997, and then I did this, and I worked here for so many years, and then I did my MBA. No, no, no. Unless there's a reason why you want to share it chronologically. Why don't you tell the person the highlights? Like, I've lived in 3 countries. I'm a global leader. I've lived and worked in 3 countries. My superpower is this, and I did this at this company, and this company, and this company, right? So share your career journey with purpose. That's one thing. The other thing you can do here is introduce yourself with purpose. If you followed my work, Priscilla will put the links in the show notes. If you followed my work, I'm really big on introducing yourself using the 3-point self-introduction: present, past, future. In all 3 of those steps, use intentionality, narrate the benefit or to you of what you're sharing. Present tense, I'm a blah, blah, blah. My expertise and skill is this, right? So start it with that. Past tense, previously tell them what you did. Tell them about your accomplishments. Again, depending on the context and the person, you're establishing credibility. You're choosing what you share. Remember I said the definition is be yourself on purpose. This is the on purpose part. You're being very conscious. And then the future is something enthusiastic about what's to come, what your goals are. So whether you're introducing yourself, whether you're sharing your career journey, whether you're meeting someone at a networking event, whether you're updating your LinkedIn profile, speak for your work and control your narrative. It's about self-awareness. It's about being conscious and not just like trying to get the mic, like it's my turn to introduce myself, blah, 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 next. No, next time someone says, let's go around the table and introduce yourself, I really hope that you will think, this is the best opportunity that I have to reinforce my strong personal brand. Look forward to your self-introduction. All right. The third thing that I encourage you to do to develop a strong personal brand is to network and build relationships. And so this is really taking the step 2. Remember I said step 1 is articulating. Step 2 is communicating. If you have lots of people in your network, yes, sure, this does include LinkedIn followers, but it also includes just getting out there. Like you see this lovely woman who's smiling at a networking event, right? It's getting in front of people and telling them what you do. And I decided to capitalize the word relationships here very purposely. I know that you're probably, if you're like most people, thinking networking, ugh, I hate it. I hate networking. That's because you're probably thinking of networking as being selfish and self-serving. I encourage you to think of networking as establishing meaningful relationships. And how do you do that? You do that by providing value to others. Think about sharing information with people, sharing your personal brand, your expertise, your skills with other people in a way that will help them. Think about connecting your network with other people in your network, right? You are adding value and you are strengthening relationships. That's all networking is. Networking is not going to events, showing up, passing out your business cards and shaking paws. No, it's actually establishing relationships. And by the way, when you go to that networking event, circle back to every single person that you met. Otherwise, you may as well not have met them. It's the same way that if you do the work and you don't talk about it, you might as well not have done it. If you go to a networking event and you meet someone and you never follow up, you might as well have not met them. You might as well have not gone to the event, right? So these are 3 ways that you can develop a strong brand. And when I look at this list, I'm like, I feel very passionately that these 3 things will get you a lot of traction in developing your brand, focusing on, remember, positive, unique, and relevant, especially unique things. Speaking up for your work, being very purposeful about that and choosing the words. Use the word lead. Please use the word lead. And if you have global experience, stop trying to hide. I talk with clients about this all the time. Stop trying to hide your accent. Your accent is evidence of your global experience. So introduce yourself as someone who has international or global experience and let your accent be evidence of that. And of course, networking and building relationships. But there's a lot to do in each of these 3 things. And I know a lot of people feel overwhelmed. And before I open it up for questions, I just want to say, if you want to learn more about me and what I do, you can go to talkabouttalk.com. I think we're all connected on LinkedIn, and I encourage you to check out the podcast. I'm on all of the podcast platforms, Apple, Spotify, and on and on and on. And now we're also on YouTube, so you can watch me. And I've done some pretty cool interviews where you can actually see what the guest looks like and see me interview them. It's actually a lot of fun. So I hope you'll check that out as well and subscribe on YouTube. So now I'm going to go open it up for questions. And the women that are here right now get first dibs.
I have a question.
Oh, yay, Fatima. Yay.
So I want to ask a question about, I used to work in the corporate space, but one of the things that I would say is unique or that I love about is bringing fun into the work that I do. And fulfillment is really, really important. So is there any suggestions or thoughts about how you do that in a way? Because the corporate side it could be a different feel, how you incorporate that, and that, if you have a personality that you want to bring fun into what you're doing and how you're supporting your clients.
I think, Fatima, one of the most effective ways of establishing a strong personal brand is taking something that someone might think is a negative and turning it into a positive. So this is really being yourself on purpose. You are the one who wants to make work fun. Hang on a second. Work is hard, right? We're supposed to be suffering and not having fun. And I feel like you can create a narrative around that where you actually call it out. And I mean, there's even cliches around this, right? Like, we spend so much time at work, we might as well enjoy what it is. And you could say that, well, like, that's the cliche, but I actually really truly believe that we will not only just enjoy ourselves more, but we'll actually be more productive if we enjoy coming into work. So I am the boss. I am the manager. I am the leader. Use the L word. I am the leader who is relentlessly focused on achieving our business objectives and making sure that we all have fun when we're here. And then you tell them how you do that. Well, because we have a mandatory offsite and you better smile and laugh when you're there, right? You could make jokes about actually evaluating people on whether they're having fun and whether they're contributing to a fun culture. And by the way, I'm also going to say this is like a fantastic platform for the most senior leader, right? Like, I'm seeing a CEO who has this brand of relentlessly focused on meeting business objectives and creating a culture that I encourage you to use the word culture, because I'm not sure what level you are, but if you're leading any kind of team, you could even say my team culture is the most fun of any culture, any team in the organization. And then as you ascend to the most senior leadership, you could say, this is the company that people want to work at because yes, we are accomplishing our business objectives, but we're also having fun. And you have a big smile on your face and it's unique. It's positive, unique, and relevant. Okay, who else has a question? Mabel's Labels. Oh gosh, we have so
Hey.
many Mabel's Labels in our
Oh,
house.
do you? I'm
Yeah.
so glad. Sorry, it's my work from home day, so I'm wearing my second city. When you mentioned Toronto, I'm like, "What?" Yeah.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to maybe clarify. I'm not sure if I kind of missed it. It was back near the beginning when you were talking about filters. And I mean, maybe I guess because I think for my brand, my personal brand, I really try to use to elevate my business brand, Mabel's Labels, right? So my customers' moms. So, like, one of my personal branding goals, which is easy, is just to be relatable because I have 6 kids and it's a shit show and whatever. And, so do all my customers. Like, it's just, my personal brand is like also trying to get through the day without smelling like baby vomit kind of thing, right? My kids are big now, but you know what I'm saying? So, I mean, I bring in, like, obviously, I guess I just think maybe you can talk a little bit more about knowing who's in the room, who your customers, who you're speaking to, because for me, I don't want to filter out that messy crap. That's what they like, right?
So I think that your story here, by the way, this is an incredible company. I know you're very successful. So my kids are 17, 18, and 22. We have in our front hall like a little plastic bag full of Wojnicki stickers, yeah, from your company. You can label everything courtesy of Mabel. So you've identified your primary target market, and it's like you are one of them. Actually, you're one of them on steroids. You have 6 kids and whatever, and you're also doing the full-time work thing. And so I think that's very smart. But this is a great example, I'm going to say, of where you're filtering what parts of your brand you're sharing. If you were at a stage where you're looking for investors and you go into a room, frankly, whether there's women there or not, having baby vomit on you should not be the first thing that comes out because you're filtering for the things that are going to help you establish credibility with those people. It doesn't mean you're not a great mom. It doesn't mean you vanished from motherhood to businesswoman. It means you're showing up as a working mom who has it together, right? And so the other parts of your brand, Julie, will be being a hard worker, able to transition, solving problems, leading teams, inspiring people, resonating with clients, all of these things. Like, I tell people to come up with a list of about 15 themes. That includes your current employer and your current title, the industry expertise you have, the functional expertise you have, your leadership style, your formal credentials, the school that you went to, whatever other credentials that you have, awards that you've won, huge things that you've created or accomplished, geography. So for some people, it's like born and bred in Toronto, but I love to travel. Or it could be, I've lived and worked in 3 different continents and I love traveling, whatever the geography is. Your family is for everybody, young, old, male, female, your family role. Like I say this, whether you say, I'm a cat mom to 2 really lucky cats, or whether you say, I'm the mom of 6 hooligans ranging in age from blah, blah, blah to blah, 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 right? We all have some kind of family role. It could be that you're in the sandwich generation. I know a lot of my peers are talking about their very aging parents and their crazy teenagers or young 20-somethings. That's another whole other thing, right? So all of these elements are part of your brand, and you never are going to share all 15 of these things because people would say you're crazy. It also includes your personal hobbies. What do you do? I don't know, Julie, after what time are they in bed? After 11:30 at night and maybe on the weekends when you're not doing Mabel's labels, right? So all of those things are part of your brand. And I mean, if you're pitching to investors, you would tell them part of our story that it makes us resonate so well with our customers is the fact that we are the target market, right? I am a mom and I do. So that's how it would come up as opposed to you grabbing a mic and sharing what happened in your house this morning, right? Does that help? Okay, I got a thumbs up. Who else has a question?
Hi, Andrew. I'm so sorry I came in late. I was on a call that just wouldn't end. So I'll listen to the recording later. But comes to imposter syndrome, and you may have already covered this. Do you think that affects everybody or primarily women? What's your point of view on that?
So the research shows that it affects everyone. And I've done a bit of a deep dive here because I would say second to personal branding, the most common questions or focuses that I get for workshops and coaching is on confidence and overcoming imposter syndrome, really. So I've done a deep dive in the research on it. I can tell you a couple things. I can tell you that the tide has shifted a little bit on imposter syndrome. There's a recent, within the last maybe 4 years, HBR article where they talk about stop blaming women for having imposter syndrome and start changing the culture so they don't feel this sense of inadequacy. And the other thing is, it's not just women. It's not just unsuccessful women. It's also successful women. It's also men that have it. I can tell you anecdotally, men are not coming to me saying I need help with my confidence to the extent that women are. I can also tell you there is beautiful research that I stumbled across this past summer that says, here's the sentence, I memorized it. Self-concept clarity builds self-esteem. When I read that sentence, I was like, yes, this is what I see. This is what I see with my clients. Self-concept clarity is building your strong, unique personal brand. Self-concept clarity builds self-esteem. That's social psychology talk for overcoming imposter syndrome and communicating with confidence, right? So I think an important thing for me to highlight, when you do the work on articulating your unique strengths and passions and skills, your confidence generally will be boosted. And when your confidence is boosted, you have credibility. We don't listen to people. We don't believe people. We don't follow people who aren't confident. If you're confident, though, people are going to say, oh, she seems to know what she's talking about. I'm going to think about what they're saying. Maybe, some of the things that I was talking about before where people talk over you or they interrupt you. These things, you can dampen them by asserting and clarifying who you are and what your value is. Yeah. So sorry, Anne, I went on a little bit of a rant there.
I love that quote also. Yeah, it's golden.
It's gold. It's what I was outside on my deck it was like July, and I read the sentence and I stood up and I did a dance. I was like, yes, 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 that's it. Self-concept clarity builds self-esteem. Bam. That's what I'm here for. Yeah, that's the link between confidence and branding. So actually, I think that's a great place to end. I want to say thank you so much for being here. I hope that you got some valuable insights. I hope you are thinking about your brand differently, whether it's what people are saying about when you're not in the room, what people think you're going to do next, or hopefully being yourself on purpose, being unapologetic, being strategic, being disciplined, taking a little bit of time. I'm telling you, a little bit of time thinking about this stuff will take you a long way. If you want to learn more, go to talkabouttalk.com. And in the top, there's like a little search, magnifying glass. You can just enter personal branding or personal brand. And a lot of the resources will come up, the masterclasses, but also the podcast episodes and newsletters and on and on. So we can continue the conversation there or on LinkedIn. And I hope you have a great rest of your day. Thank you. Talk soon.